Sejam bem-vindos, sejam bem-vindas ao Pareamento. Meu nome é Henrique Ângelo, eu sou um cientista comportamental. Estou aqui na conferência da ABAI, na Filadélfia, conversando com 3 grandes cientistas comportamentais que estão pensando em como disseminar a análise do comportamento. Eu vou pedir para cada um deles se apresentar um pouco. E agora a gente vai começar em inglês e eu vou colocar todas as legendas em português para vocês. Então, vamos lá? Well, guys, thank you so much for accepting being here with us. This is Pareamento, a podcast by PAR Institute, Instituto PAR. We are a behavior science institute in Brazil. And I would like for you to present yourselves. I think that our audience will really love what you have to say about how we can reach wider audience with behavior analysis. Okay, first, Jay, and you present yourself.
Hi, my name is Jay Schultz. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Nevada, Reno.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stacy Sheehan. I am currently unaffiliated with an academic institution, but I'm heavily involved in the Behaviors for Social Responsibility Special Interest Group, the Association for Behavior Analysis International. I'm also the editor-in-chief for Behavior and Social Issues.
And I am Scott Geller, professor of psychological science for 54 years at Virginia Tech. And I've studied applied behavioral science for 50 years. And we've attempted to take our science to the real world. We know how to change behavior. I should say improve behavior in many situations, from schools to industry to the community. But the challenge is getting it out to the real world, because the real world doesn't get it, and we don't communicate that well with the real world. We have our academic language and we publish in our academic journals, but we don't write what we know for magazines and newspapers, and we don't get on news shows to let the world know what we know to improve human welfare.
I see. One of the questions that I have is, I think we are in a world where people look for effectivity and the evidence-based interventions and all stuff, but sometimes we start to destroying bridges between behavior analysis and all other kind of science. And I'd like some insights from you how we can build bridges with other science, because I think that they are having success trying to reach what we want to do. We want to save the world, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to listen, to first and foremost listen, right? You can't just come in and be like, this is what you should be doing, and you haven't worked in that area at all. So there are people in public health doing awesome work, and they've been doing awesome work for a long time. And it's how do we collaborate with you to improve on, shared goals, right? It's not just coming in and saying, this is the way you need to do it. And learning about how they do things, right? So it's not just, this is the way I do it, and this is the way it should be done. It's, okay, how do you do it? Why do you do it that way? And how can we work together to meet whatever area we're trying to improve? So I think my first thought when you said that was, well, listen. We need to listen more.
And what Jay's talking about is empathy. Empathy. Find out where the other person is coming from before you tell them where you're coming from. And by the way, that's humanism. That's the basic philosophy of humanism. And I suggest it's not behaviorism, and it's not behavior analysis. That's a turn-off word. It's like psychoanalysis. We do more than analyze. We intervene. We help people. So it's not just behaviorism, however. It's humanistic behaviorism. It's applying the principles of empathy so we can apply our science to make a difference in the world.
Now, one of the things I've been writing and talking about for the last several years is getting involved. Oftentimes, we walk in somewhere or expect someone to provide us with all the accolades and salaries and supports for being the expert in understanding behavior and contingencies, because we can bring so much to the table. And if they would just understand what a science of behavior could bring to them, then they would be so much better off. But what we have to do is start at the beginning, build relationships, build rapport. There's a youth development center that's about a mile from where I live. And while I'm currently academically unaffiliated, my plan is to stop in. I don't need to tell them all the things that I'm going to do or can do or all the things that I've done. I might mention that I've taught some reading. But if they need someone to clean the restrooms, if they need someone to prepare the snacks, that's where I'm going to start with this group. They have been doing this work in this community for over 30 years, and I don't need to come in there and tell them all the things that I could do differently or better. They need to tell me what they need, and then I can figure out where I can piece in. I want to add just one other thing to that. We talk about this all the time. We are at the 50th anniversary of the Association for Behavior Analysis International Convention. And I'm sitting here thinking that this is 50 years of us saying, how do we get our message out? That's human behavior too. That's behavior that we can analyze, think about, count, measure, and figure out different ways that we can make our message more known, or I would say more relevant to what's keeping people up at night.
And what Tracy is saying really is we know how to improve behavior, but we need to know what's the behavior. Mm-hmm. What behavior do you want to improve? So that's why it takes the listening. That's why it takes finding out your perspective. It takes empathy. Understand it. And then we don't just tell you what to do to change behavior. We help you apply the techniques so you can improve the behavior, whether you're in the classroom or whether you're on we work with police, community policing. It's not just about finding the bad stuff. If you see something, say something. Should mean if you see something good, say something good. If you see an act of kindness, show gratitude and say thank you.
Good. Actually, I read a few years ago, I read a paper by John Krapfels, it's called Behaviorism in Society. Mm-hmm. And he was, one of his sentence says, well, behavior analysis is very bad at marketing. And yes. And one of the things that I was captivated by when you were talking, Dr. Geller, was when you were editor of Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis, JABA, you tried to implement a marketing sector, a marketing department there. Can you tell us a little bit about it? What happened right and what happened wrong? Why did it didn't work?
Well, it's not that it didn't work. A new editor came in, and just like Obama, President Obama in 2015 understood applied behavioral science. And in fact, he had a declaration to say, permanent order, that we're going to apply this. But then what happens? A new administration comes in, and it's over. And so let's face it, JABA is essentially about autism. It has been about autism. And it is about behavior analysis. And we're trying to go further, and Tracy's in working with a group now trying to take it out to the streets. I've been trying to do it a long time, but now I'm going to try again.
I think I think folks are ready. When I was teaching so many students, or how do I do this? How do I get involved in this area? And a couple of my latest papers have also been about this. I get emails. How do I start working in this area? How do I do something? How do I get into working on things that are going to focus on sustainability? How do I do community-based work? How do we work in public health? And so working with the journal, we're trying to cultivate that, but also with the Behaviors for Social Responsibility Special Interest Group. And that's what Dr. Schultz was talking about earlier today, is as his work and the work of the working group focused on the intersectionality of public health and human behavior. When you ask people what problems keep them up at night, 9 times out of 10, it has to do with human behavior. That is something that we are skilled and good at. But then, as Dr. Geller was mentioning, how do we help them to think about how to solve their own problems, right? How do we bring the science to the persons who are most affected by it? One of the first things I learned early on in my career was to work myself out of a job. And so if I do my job as a behavior scientist well, I am no longer needed except for maybe some moral support, to drop in a couple of reinforcers here and there to keep the behavior change going. But those are kinds of some of the things I think we need to be thinking about and looking at.
In my undergraduation, I heard a professor, a social psychology professor, saying that psychologists work for don't be needed, and that's the thing that I'm trying to pursue, and I say to my students, and it's really good to hear that United States we have people with the same thoughts here. See.
And we have a long-standing history as behavior scientists and working in different areas. Dr. Geller was presenting some of the special sections and issues of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis from the early 90s. Behavior and Social Issues is a journal completely dedicated to this topic. Yeah. Skinner was writing about it. The series of books edited by Peter Lamall. We had eco-behavior scientists, behavior community psychologists. These folks are still working and active. And there are some, if you go back and read the literature from the late 1960s, early 1970s, and then kind of follow it through, you see that there's a strong foundation from which we can continue to build from and keep moving. Read deeply, read what came before.
Yeah, and how do we go into it understanding that we might not know everything and we can learn from others? And so behavioral community psychology is like the integration of community psychology and a natural science of human behavior. And how do we take what community psychologists talk about with being participatory, looking at equity issues? How do we combine those and get the best of both worlds, right? So it's not just we're coming in because we know everything. It's we're coming in and being like, all right, let's learn together and let's collaborate and know that we can push our science farther, I think, if we also do it in a way where we're learning.
Yeah, I think Fawcett 91 speaks perfectly to that.
Yes.
It's beautiful. That's what we're all about. And you know, I must say that our culture in the U.S., we're very much individualistic. We're very much self-serving. I don't have to talk to people. I've got the internet. I've got my Skinner box. I can walk around and push buttons. I mean, really, we have to get back to interacting with people. Yes. Empathy means interacting with people. We can't show empathy with the internet, you know. And so, but the bottom line is that we hear us say we have the science. We know how to do. We need to do it. We need to learn what you need, and then we need to get acceptance. Yes. So you do it because you want to, not because you have to.
Now, there is one thing I usually say, that's we when we face different people, we have 2 different kinds of gesture we could have. You can be open to, in curiosity, oh, I want to know more about you, what you do, or we can see the difference, an error, and if you see that an error, well, you will probably reject it. And I feel that we have some part of our community seeing the difference as an error and trying to be away with them instead of learn with them. And I think that hearing you here says a lot to me about this and this endeavor that we're all working in. I don't know if you could tell us a little bit about the Matrix project, because I feel that it's a really interesting idea.
Yeah,
starting.
I'm happy to. The first thing I want to say is that we probably need to call this a little bit something different. So I'm going to talk about 2 things. I'm going to talk about the Behaviors for Social Responsibility Matrix project, and then I'm going to talk about complex interdependency diagrams, which have also been called matrix analysis. And there are many other uses of the term matrix in behavior analysis and behavior science. And so I think we might need to take our own advice and recast how we talk about it a little bit. But first, I'll talk a little bit about the Behaviors for Social Responsibility Matrix Project. This is a project that was initiated by Mark Mataney and Molly Luke in 2014 in their editorial for Behavior and Social Issues. And what the goals were to increase the number of behavior scientists working in areas of social importance, to increase the number of behavior scientists working on taking behavior science to scale, or as what we've been talking about today, to get other folks interested, invested, curious about what it is that we can do with the natural science of behavior, which relates then to the third goal, is to get other community folks, other community-based organizations, corporations, federal government, local government, interested in behavior science and approaching us. And so to try and tackle those three goals, we analyzed 28 different societal sectors using a complex interdependency diagram kind of scenario. And from those 28 different sectors, we had non-governmental organizations, to ABAI itself, to the special interest groups, to university-based behavior analysis or behavior science training programs. And what we wanted to think about was, with all of those sectors, what were two immediately feasible practices that they could be engaging in right now toward addressing those three goals of the BFSR Matrix Project, and then what's one slightly more challenging that we might need to work to. After identifying those practices, which wasn't easy, we did a lot of research and interviewing and other things. We then went and looked at what are the environmental controlling variables that would evoke or set the occasion for, or make it more or less reinforcing to engage in that practice. And then what are the naturally maintaining consequences? What happens afterwards that's going to keep it going once it starts? So we see a lot of work about like behavioral insights and or nudge, right? Like we can get a behavior going, but then what are we going to do to keep it going? And so we were interested in both of those aspects. From that analysis, then we created working groups. These are groups that are focused on trying to improve or increase the practices of these various sectors, or work across these sectors in a specific topic or context area: public health, sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion, education and access, community resilience. Help me, Jay. I said sustainability, public health. Oh, public policy. We're starting a new one on public policy just at this convention. And so we use these complex interdependency diagrams, or what's been called the matrix analysis, to understand not just the individual behavioral contingencies, but also those networks and systems of contingencies. They're interdependent among each other. Once you start to intervene in one area, that has a cascading effect in another area. And so we're helping to bring these tools of our analysis, what we already know about the science of behavior, to help people to analyze social issues and to find the root causes, and to find kind of the easiest place to start with an intervention that's going to have the greatest cascading effect, but to do that in collaboration with community.
But the challenge, as I see it, is communication. Mm-hmm. Communicating in such a way that the public understands and the public accepts. And that's easier said than done, because we have a tendency to get very academic in our analyses and our diagrams and our charts, rather than speaking a language that the public people understand. So we have to be marketers. We have to know how to market our science, and that's what's missing. And I want to say something else. Life is continuous learning. Life is about continuing to learn and continuing to teach, whatever our age. I mean, I'm 82 years old, man, and you know what? I still continue to learn, and that's part of our. We have to see it that way. We continue to learn. We've had administrations in our country that didn't believe that. The last administration, I won't get political, but they just thought they knew it all. No, life is about learning and teaching. Learning and teaching.
And this work that we're doing is about learning and teaching. We try something, it may not work. We look at the data, we try it again. We talk to the community members. We try to understand what problems are most important for them. And we work with them to develop the solutions, because it has to be important and meaningful to them as well.
Talking about communication, one of the things that I attended to a workshop here that was Adam Hockman, I think.
Adam Hockman.
Adam Hockman, and he was trying to teach people how to communicate with magazines and blogs and the mainstream media. And I think that it's really hard for us to do that, but we have to attend to, we need to publish more, we need to talk to our community. And now we are saying that we need to talk to outside our community. It may be overwhelming for us. Do you have any thoughts about it?
What you've said is so right on. For example, we have to start attending conferences of the problem that we're working in. If it's education, educational conferences. If it's energy conservation, we got to go to those conferences, and we have to write articles for their magazines. I mean, for example, I wrote an article every month for 10 years for the Industrial Safety and Hygiene magazine. Now, that did nothing for me academically. My colleagues could care less, but it got the science to the magazines that the people read to understand safety, public safety and hygiene. But the bottom line is we have to take our science to the areas, from conferences to magazines, newspaper articles, and so forth. But unfortunately, the contingencies in our academic world hold us to doing this stuff that's esoteric to our own field, writing in our journals, writing in Java rather than the real world journal.
Yeah, and I don't have an answer of how to do that. That's a good question. But if you're working with a community-based organization and you do some sort of intervention, how are you then telling that community-based organization what the results are? And how are you talking with them that, oh, these are the results. Let's make some sense of what happened and what's the next steps. Like, that's an important part. It's not just publishing in a scientific journal. But back to your point, like, we need to publish in scientific journals. We don't necessarily need to do the other things to get tenure. So how do we make time for it?
But that's right. If you care about dissemination and you care about making a difference, maybe that's part of what the project, the social responsibility folks have to do, is convince us academics to write for the real world. Like I say, I've been doing it for many years. It's very reinforcing because you're knowing you're reaching real people. It might not help me in the act, but see, I started after I was already promoted to full professor, so I didn't have to worry about that ranking system, and I had the freedom to talk to the real world.
I have a couple of thoughts I want to add. You mentioned that we don't know how to do this. Well, earlier today, we were in a panel talking about the publication process. When I first started writing manuscripts for publication in academic journals, I didn't know how to do that either. And so it's a skill that you learn, that you develop through feedback, and things that kind of happen. You develop that skill along the way. There are other disciplines that are actually really good at it. When I was working on my master's in public health, which I haven't finished, full disclaimer, I took a health policy management class, and the instructor's writing was exquisite. He was so able to condense such incredible information into a few pages that were really readily understandable for the general public. And we can practice those things. We can build that into our courses. We can build opportunities then for students to practice those skills. We can practice those skills. At the same time, if it's not credit for our load, we can change the institutional contingencies. These are all problems with human behavior. And these are all things that we can think about how we might be able to shift the environment, to shift the other contingencies or behaviors that we might be to engage in. Try it, practice, see what happens. Write a paper for publication, and then write a companion piece for your local newspaper.
Most of my teaching now is editing students' writing to meet the needs of where they're publishing it. And I might say that the same basic techniques we know to improve written expression works for journals as well for newspapers. I mean, it's not a big difference. We're still talking to real people, and it's the technical language we have to eliminate for certain publications.
One of the things that Jay's presentation got me is that we are used to use single case designs, and when we talk to wider audience, usually people use statistical measures and group designs. Jay, could you elaborate a bit more how how it was difficult when working with public health.
So some of the work I've done with that is like with my MPH, I actually went, I was working with the local health department and they wanted qualitative research. So good, fine. I didn't know how to do that, but I went and learned because I was still in school. So I had mentors so that I could do the qualitative research, going back to the dissemination or the talking to people. Then you present that to the CEO of the hospital that you did the research in. You present it to town council people as well. Like, so you need to go out and talk about what's happening with the people that are interested in it. And then part of it is you built those relationships, you listened, or I listened, I guess. And then it was like, all right, this is what you wanted. There's this other problem that we all care about. Like, I have a solution to this, and it needs it could use a single subject design to do that. And then you get to teach them about single subject design, and you get to go through our process, and now they're open and willing to listen to it too. But it took a year of working with them doing other things before that happened. So like, it's difficult, but there's also some problems that might be more helpful. Like if we look at it from a value sense of like, we're trying to improve the world. We're trying to predict and influence social behaviors, like socially important behaviors. What is helpful to doing that? And maybe a group design is helpful at some points, and maybe a single subject design is helpful. And like, is there ways to do both, right? To do pilot programs where you're implementing single subject, which you probably have more to say about, and then taking that and making it a group design. I'm not sure if I totally got to your answer to your question there, but
one of the things that I was thinking is that politicians use statistical measures to make decisions about how to implement a policy or not, and probably we will have a hard time trying to get to public policy thing because we don't use that kind of measures.
I mean, the measures we use and the designs we use should depend on the questions. And in many cases, we do need to use single subject design to understand what the relationships between the variables are at the individual level. But when we move to developing a technology that can be applied to address a broad range of individuals' behavior, then we might need to start to look at some different research designs to help us to answer some of those questions that might make us more relevant to some of those in leadership positions or making those decisions. Dr. Geller?
Absolutely. We don't have to be tied to a particular kind of design. But unfortunately, some behavior analysts are trained to only be concerned about single subject design. And that's unfortunate. I mean, behavioral science is much bigger than that. And by the way, we can also study feelings. We can do a qualitative analysis as well as a quantitative analysis. Psychological science is much broader than some behavior analysts teach. And the bottom line is it is psychological science, behavioral science. It's much bigger. And we need to, again, we're back to language. We can analyze situations from a group perspective, an individual perspective. We can analyze their behaviors. We can also analyze their feelings, their opinions, their attitudes related to behavior. It's much bigger. And I think sometimes behavior analysts define themselves in a way that puts them in a small little box. This is our way of doing it. No, it's much bigger than that.
I really would like to thank you all for agreeing with participating in Pareamento. It's a quite new project we have in Par Institute. I would like to say, if you want to leave a last message, a sentence for our watchers, our listeners.
Well, I could say that we've started a movement called the Actively Caring for People movement. Notice, actively caring. We all care. Yeah. But we don't necessarily act on our caring. The acting is behavior. The caring is humanism. So it is humanistic behaviorism. But we have a movement. Check out the website, ac4p.org.
I will put that on the description of the...
Yeah, learn about the Actively Caring for People movement. I mean, it is really behavioral scientists trying to make the world a better place, to improve human welfare on a large scale.
Thank you very much.
I would just add to that, get involved, to check out the Behaviors for Social Responsibility Special Interest Group. We're a volunteer-run space trying to tackle some of these challenges. We're happy to help you out and to get you involved with respect to that. And read and grow. Look at behavior and social issues. Look at the 1992 issues of the Journal of Applied Behavior Analysis. Read some of the texts from the late 60s, early 70s. Well, and then get in touch with us. We'll point you in the right direction. I'm gonna add one more thing, because Dr. Schultz is recruiting doctoral students with an interest in public health and human behavior.
Yes, I am. I just started my assistant professor position at the University of Nevada, Reno, and I am looking for PhD students. So if you're interested, please feel free to reach out if you're interested in public health topics.
Oh, amazing. So thank you all, really.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. This has been great.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Então, a gente fica por aqui nesse episódio super especial do Pareamento. Gente, muito obrigado pela sua audiência. A gente se vê no próximo. Um abraço.